So in this video, I'm going to paint this little landscape that you see here. It's intentionally left very loose. So I pre-mixed these colors before I even started to paint the landscape. And here's the little source that I'm using to paint this landscape from. I generated it on Midjourney, and I did it in the style of Arthur Streeton. One of the things about the image is that I originally created these, a whole bunch of them that I liked many months ago. And I've changed my mind a little bit, and this is just a matter of personal taste, but I think in the future, I'm not going to be working from images that look like paintings. This goes back to sort of like, if I'm going to work from a photograph, I want that photograph to be as close to real life as possible, so that I'm doing all the interpreting with my paint. And so whatever style I have in my own work, I want to look at something that's as close to real life as possible, which means a good photograph, or in the case of an AI generated image, one that's made to look like a photograph so that it's highly realistic. And that way I'm not sort of copying somebody else's style. Now, there's nothing in the world wrong with doing that, and that's why I decided to go ahead and do this particular one. And I think I only spent about an hour and 25 minutes painting this little landscape. You know, that's without the color mixing. I probably spent an hour mixing the colors. But it kind of makes it nice to pre-mix a lot of the colors. And I play with these colors as I paint. You'll see how I do that. So I didn't by any means mix up all the colors, but I mixed up the greens and the sky colors and the faraway hill colors, just so that I wouldn't have to stop and do that, while the cameras were running. Or even if I was going to do this for myself, I'd probably do the same thing. It's just nice to have all those colors to play with. And you'll see just how much I do play with them. So my intention was not to create by any means. I'm not trying to copy the AI image. That I don't care if it's different. I really am not consciously thinking about changing it. What I really did was just decided that I didn't want to spend a lot of time on this. I just wanted to dash it off. And so, like I said, I spent about an hour, I think it was an hour and 25 minutes on the painting part and about an hour on the color mixing. But I'm never going to get real tight with this thing. And the other thing I did with this one, and the last three that I painted, I did not do this with. But what I did with this one was I did it in 2 layers, just because I thought it would look better if I did. And secondly, I wanted to show you guys how I typically paint landscapes. Usually what I'll do is I'll start on them and work on them a little bit, and then they end up drying, and then I add some more to it, and then that dries, and it just kind of works like that. And I think that's probably typical for a lot of artists, especially ones that aren't doing it full time. But I'm doing it full time, but it's just, so in this one, what I did was, and this is what I would recommend for anybody painting these sorts of landscapes, is you first paint it and paint the whole thing wet and wet. And the moment it starts becoming a milky mess, or you just feel like the more you work on it, the more blurry and soft it's getting, and you're just not, you've got to keep that texture on the surface. You never want to get out a fan brush and just soften the whole thing for sure. So in order to maintain that texture, it's really easy to come back with a second layer and put in some surface texture like on the trees and everything else. Now notice as I'm painting in the sky, those hills against the stained canvas, they don't look dark. But as I start to paint in the white, the hills will look like dark hills off in the distance. I mean, they're not dark hills, but what I mean is, well, just notice the transition here as I put the white in, where those hills look light and almost looked like sky themselves before. Now that I'm putting the white in up against it, you can see how much darker they look. And you'll see that even down here on the bottom, against that light far off hill, which doesn't even look like a hill, but now that I put the white around it, it works. This goes back to something I'm always talking about. In fact, in my video I just made, talking about not trying to judge your work until you have all the colors laid in. So you can do a lot of color checking, and if you work from these Midjourney images, have them printed out on glossy photo paper, same scale if you can, and then secondly, have them laminated with a glossy laminate so you can check your colors right on the image, which I did do in this. I didn't film any of it because I didn't have a camera set up on the image. But if you were just starting out with this method, you'd be doing a lot of color checking if you were learning to see colors and values. So I don't do very much color checking myself, but I will every once in a while if I feel like I'm lost, put a spot of color on the photo and see whether it needs to be darker or lighter. So just laying in these, this is actually going to be the shadow on the grass, as you can see in the source image there. And again, these colors, they might look like normal greens sitting on that stained canvas, but they're not going to really look right. It's not going to look like a shadow until I put those lighter greens where the sun's hitting next to these greens, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. So the trees are different. Even the colors are different. I started off with these basic greens that you see here on this palette. They're very dirty greens, as you can see. But then when I painted them, I would, when I'm all done, I would add strong greens and some oranges and some yellows, and all of that relative color is what makes these greens pretty. So you can see how different they look on the palette than they do on the canvas. And that's all part of, just the whole colors being relative, and you can't really judge a color until you see it with the color next to it. So a lot of these, right now I'm trying to almost do like more of an orange, which orange is the opposite of purple. So there's a color scheme that I love, and I think Sargent and some of my other favorite artists also, and that is what you have: strong color with a dirty complement. So in this case, we have some purple looking hills, and then I'm going to put all this yellow, strong yellow, in the foreground and in the grass. It's not like super strong yellow, but there's going to be little bits of very strong yellow and even like an orange. So orange is the opposite of blue, and you can see the bit of blue in the sky and in those faraway hills. But it's also kind of a purple. It's almost like a dirty bluish purple. So what is the opposite of purple? It's yellow, and that's just basic color wheel. So if you want to learn my method, if you look in the description of this video, you'll find links to all my videos that teach the workflow that I teach, that anybody can learn. It's all free. Just go watch it on YouTube. but there's nothing hidden that I don't teach. I teach you everything. You really can just learn to paint high realism just watching my YouTube videos. I also teach classes in Austin, for the time being anyway. All right, so one of the things you'll notice is that, whenever, one of the things that happens is when you mix white, or like those gray hills, um, with dark colors like a black, you get just gray. So it's very common for me whenever I'm painting in is to put some burn umber between, like for instance, over on the right, the black and the green. I put a line of burn umber with maybe a little yellow and red in it. But that's to, counteract that gray. Gray and milky colors are the opposite of orange. So burn umber is like a dark orange. And so that's what I've done along that stream that runs through the middle of the landscape there. This is before I'm putting any reflections on the water. I'm getting all my darks in. I'll put the reflections in a minute. But there's a stream that runs across the foreground there. And I wanted to get all those burn umbers and those oranges. And I'll tone that down later, but as I start to lay in the rest of the colors and the reflections on the water, I wanted to have that warmth in there. I always tell my students in my private classes that I don't like them to use the word warm or cold when describing their colors. And I'm doing it right now. And there's nothing wrong with describing colors as warm or cold, but in terms of understanding how to mix colors and understanding how to push your colors around and have control over your color, warm and cold is not helpful, because a better word is this color is more blue, or this color is more orange. People would say that orange is warm and blue is cold. But and I understand that, and there's nothing wrong with talking about color like that. But I just mean in terms of understanding the color, it's always best to think about it in terms of those color words that you learned in kindergarten. Which color is more red? Which color is more yellow? Which color is more purple? Which color is more blue? Which color is more, what did I forget? Orange. The three primaries, yellow, red, blue, and the three secondaries, purple, orange, and green. And if you think about colors with just those 6 words, you know what to do. If I tell you your color is too purple, you add yellow, which is the opposite. Okay, so now from this point on, the painting has dried. This is 10 days later, and I'm coming in, and you can see I have a completely different, brush work. I can just take the edge of this dirty brush full of mud or whatever it is and just dance it around on the surface and get some really nice texture that I can't get when I'm working wet and wet. Landscapes are just great for doing in 2 layers, two layers or more, because I can work on those trees only so long, and then they start turning into a milky mess. But it's so easy to lay that texture on there, as you can see how I'm doing it. Trying to keep things abstract, and that's the big thing, especially whenever you're painting nature. There has to be an abstraction. You can't get too orderly with it all. You don't ever want to paint leaf, 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 or branch, 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 all in a row like little lines. We naturally bring order to whatever we paint. Now, I don't really know what I'm doing at this point. If you can look at the image, it's quite different. I think I was just having fun, I guess. in the end, I think it worked out pretty well. But I decided not to do those red hills, or at least not as red as I saw them in the image. And I can't tell you why I decided to do that. There are some things that are just feeling. You know, you say, well, this just feels right. Um, and I try not to teach that because you can't teach it. So, you know, but basically it's, at this point, I'm still thinking about realism. I'm thinking about how do trees look? They should have shadows under the branches. Reflections are easy. That's just real basic science. So here I am painting in the shadow, but the reflections are unaffected by the shadow. And that's because you're basically just looking at a mirror that's reflecting that sky off in the distance, which is why I'm just using my sky color. But as long as that reflection is coming from a bright sky, it's not going to affect the shadow. So that's just kind of like logic. You know, as things get off in the distance, they get more milky in general. So that's why the farthest mountain looks most like the sky, because it starts getting more and more air between it. So now I'm putting in those reds, and that was just because I felt like it was a little bit too monochromatic, and I was just trying to mix it up a little bit. But it's fun to paint on dry canvases like this. I don't do it often. So a few little touches on the sky there. And you can see how different my painting is than the original or than the source photo. And here's the finished painting, which I think I'm pretty happy with. Oh, I wanted to just quickly mention that we have some colors back in stock at Geneva Fine Art. We've got bismuth yellow, titanium white, and also stain and brushed it back in stock. So if you're interested in purchasing any of those and this non-toxic oil paint that we manufacture right here in Austin, please go to genevafineart.com and you can check that out. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.